Welcome to Fatima today. I'm John Veneri, editor of Catholic Family News, and I'm sitting in for your regular host, Father Nicholas Gruner. In the past few programs, we've been talking with Colleen Hammond, author of Dressing with Dignity, and we're going to continue our discussion about motherhood, about femininity, about the fact that men and women do actually have feminine and masculine natures. And we'll open with an interesting story about motherhood, and that is that today, of course, the whole push for the woman is career first, family second, or the second greatest lie, which maybe it is the greatest lie, is that you can have both. You can have your career and you can just as well have your family. But you were faced with that head on, and you can tell us about that.
Yeah, I was doing the weather at the Weather Channel at the time and was negotiating in my contract to take Willard Scott's place at the NBC Today show. And I always say now that Al Roker got my job, which is interesting because NBC bought the Weather Channel, so he just ended up coming back to where I would have been anyway. But I fully intended to stay in my career because I had bought into all the stories where you can have it all. You can keep your career, you can have your family, you can do everything. And so they were to the point where I needed to sign my contract, so I needed to fly up to New York. Well, I was right at the end of my pregnancy, and my doctor forbade me from flying because he didn't want me to give birth on a plane, and I didn't either. So I stayed. Well, then the baby was born, and they don't tell you that all these new hormones are going to be released into your body. So, you know, after a 36-hour labor, you know, I gave birth to an 11.5-pound baby, you know, and just this chunk of a child. But I looked down at him, and something new came over me that I had never felt before as a career woman and as a businesswoman. I wanted to put all of that aside and stay with this baby, this newborn child that I had been given. And now I was faced with this dilemma. Do I stay home? Do I go back to work? I had 6 weeks off. My agent was calling me. We need to sign this contract. Please call me back. Why aren't you calling me back? I was so confused. I didn't know what to do. Here I had this very large contract, you know, and I'm looking at this one contract, and there was a dollar sign with lots of zeros and commas, and, you know, there was a big, big amount of money. But in my other hand, I'm holding this newborn baby who at this point was a few weeks old. And I thought, do I want this or do I want this? And I knew I couldn't have both. You know, I couldn't be at work all day but still be taking care of a baby. I would have to give the baby to somebody else to take care of, even only a few hours a day or a couple of days a week where I wouldn't be the mother. So I had to decide, is this what I wanted or was this what I wanted? I wanted both. But I realized in my heart of hearts, I thought, oh, I could have it all. You can have both. You know, everyone else is telling me, oh, you can go back to work. You need the money. But I thought, you know, what doth it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? I thought, here's the whole world, but I think this is my responsibility. This is my duty as this child. And it was the hardest decision I had made in my life up to that point. And I decided to rip up the contract and tell them I wasn't coming in and I was going to stay home and be a stay-at-home mother. It was one of the hardest decisions. And I regretted the decision for quite some time afterwards. I don't regret it now. But I wondered for years, did I make the right decision? I saw so many of my friends in the industry that were doing both. You know, they did have the family. Oh, Colleen, you made a mistake. You could have done it. You could have done both things. Now I look at their children. I look at their families. Many of them are divorced. You know, many of their children have gone down paths that were the wrong path. You can't have them both. You know, it's like saying, you know, all right, I want you to look at this cup and I want you to look at this cup. Look at them both. You can't. You're looking at this one, back at this one, this one, this one. You know, you can't look at two things at one time. You can't do two things at one time.
Well, what it introduces is a divided loyalty to mom, in the heart of mom, who should be the heart of the home.
Right. The hand, they're saying, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And my sister-in-law was totally against homeschooling until she met my children. And she said, wow, you did such a good job with them. You know, and they're stained with original sin. They're not perfect, of course, not by any means. But any flaws that they have are, you know, because I put them there. But I devoted my life to those 4 children. And now I can touch 4 times as many people with my philosophies and in the church's philosophy, in the things that I raised them with. But I devoted, that was my job, that was my daily duty. I focused totally on them and creating them. Now, there's people that stay home with their children, and they're stay-at-home mothers, but they put their children in schools, or they're busy off with the tennis club or doing whatever they want to do. I gave up myself to focus on them. And now I can go back to my career at a later time, and I do things on the side. I wrote the book. You know, there's things, it's not like I sit home in fluffy slippers and curlers and eating bonbons, and, you know, there are other things that I do as well.
Like being here for this program.
Like being here, exactly. So, you know, it's not like you give up all of yourself. You expand yourself into your children and into their lives and into their friendships and the things that they expand on and do. So it was a difficult decision, but now I never regret it. For years I wondered if I did the right thing. Now I have no question at all.
Well, I was Dr. Alice von Hildebrand, who said that I saw her give a speech on Simone de Beauvoir, who was one of the early feminists. And she said something very interesting I never forgot. She said, when the hunter wants to kill an animal, where does he aim? Does he aim for the foot? Does he aim for the tail? He aims for the heart. Because if you shoot them in the heart, they're dead. And she said modern society has shot the maternal instinct in the heart. The whole purpose, or I should, maybe purpose is not the right word, but the whole maternal instinct that women have naturally has been shot in the heart by this whole new feminism, this whole new idea that, as we said in an earlier program, for a woman to be successful, she has to have a career, she has to be doing what the men do, which really undermines what a woman is. And it's as if a woman can't be dignified just by being a woman. She has to be a man. I'd say that's sexist myself.
Well, you know, yeah. Well, yeah, you're saying that being a woman isn't good enough.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it defeats its whole purpose by saying, you know, I'm just as good as a man. Where you would think feminism would say, I'm better than a man. Look how feminine I can be. You know, you would think that that whole idea would be femininity is superior. So why aren't you men more like us? Well, they want to change roles. They
Yes.
want to become more like a man, but they want the man to become more like a woman. To the point now where a recent study came out that said that more management positions in the United States, 53%, are being run by women. So where are the men? Does that mean
Yeah.
they're home breastfeeding the babies? I don't think so.
I don't want to see that.
No, I don't think that can happen. But you know, so then, you know, it just defeats the whole purpose, and so.
Well, what it does is the whole social framework changes, and then the whole idea of femininity is lost. And there are stories of men no longer giving their seats to women or open doors to women because of the hostile reception that they receive from women.
Right, and I was raised that way. I can do it myself. And it gets down to the basic problem that women have, just by our very nature, is pride. And the basic problem a man has is a lack of charity. You know, I'll do it myself. I won't ask for help unless I absolutely need it, and I won't accept help, you know. So we each have that flaw built in our character.
Didn't you say that there's a study done that shows that the men don't even listen to the GPS instructions anymore?
That's true. They actually have shown that even when the GPS tells a man to turn, he's like, no, I have a better way, and he'll go his own way, and then the GPS is telling him what to do. So it's part of our culture. It's part of how we've been raised. You know, I'm a woman, I can do it myself. I was raised with this book called The Cinderella Complex, you know, where, oh, you don't be the woman that waits for the man to come in and rescue you, you know. So I was raised, you know, you be the businesswoman. You know, my mother did not teach me how to cook, because I was supposed to hire a cook. I was not told how to sew or how to clean, how to organize a home, how to do. I was supposed to go out and get a job, make enough money so I could hire other people to do that for me, because it would be degrading for a woman to, you know, balance her checkbook, you know, and she couldn't do that type of thing. So my husband and I were actually at a conference where there was a young lady with this very large box going up a set of stairs, and 3 young men following her up the steps with their hands stuffed in their pockets, and they were just moping along. And my husband stopped one of the young men and said, "Carry that box for her." And he said, "Well, we offered Mr. Hammond, but she won't let us." And that's the same experience my husband says he's run into in the business world as well, where as an executive at his company, he was holding the door open. He saw another woman coming in, a fellow employee and a fellow executive to his company. And so he saw her coming, so he waited for a second and held the door open for her. And she stopped and she went, "Why are you holding the door open for me? Oh, what's the matter? Don't you think I can open the door for myself? You think I'm such a weak little woman that I can't open the door? Is that why you're doing it?" And he said, "No, I was holding the door for you because I'm a gentleman." Well, she was so offended that he said anytime after that she would be in the parking lot at the same time as him, she would take off running for the door just so that he wouldn't hold it open for her, instead of seeing it as an act of respect. I mean, I would do the same thing at a store. If I saw someone carrying a box, I would hold the door. If I see an elderly couple, I'll stop and hold as a sign of respect for that fellow human being. But she saw it as a derogatory act.
My sister, I had told you before, my sister had worked in a band for a number of years. And she was on stage one night and she just said out of the blue to the audience, "All right, how many of you girls out there are liberated?" And all the girls went, "Yay!" And she said, "You're all a bunch of morons," she said. And then she starts strutting up and down the stage, very feminine, saying, "I love being a woman. I love men opening doors for me." And of course, the women were furious, and even though they were all lowlifes in the crowd, the men are going, "Yeah, this is great." But even at that level, what nature has instilled in men and women is still operating, even in the nightclubs.
Right. Right.
And even on airplanes.
Well, I have a lot of you travel. I travel a lot. You travel a lot, and for me, my traveling experience as a woman is probably different than yours as a man. But I got to the point where I thought, okay, I'm going to test this theory. Do men really want to do this, or is it just my husband, or are men liberated as well as they refuse to help women? And I found that men have had the same experience that my husband has, and as these young men had that offered for this woman. They have been shot down so many times when they break out of their mold and they try to offer an act of charity. They have been shot down so many times they don't even offer anymore. So I got into a plane and it was loaded with books because they don't weigh your carry-ons and they can be as heavy as you want. And I had all these books in the bag, and I got on the plane and looked, and I started to struggle with this bag and trying to pick it up, kind of on purpose, overacting and struggling more than I needed to. And I kind of looked down the back of the plane, and there were 3 men back there. They were all leaning out, just watching me struggle with this bag. And I thought, see? And so I said, oh. And I turned to one of them and I said, "Excuse me, sir." And before I could even finish the sentence, he had jumped up out of his seat, had come up and said, "Here, let me get that for you." So I think men have, as part of their very character, that desire to provide and protect a woman that he sees as someone that he cherishes, respects, and wants to help. And we beat that out of them so that they don't want to offer anymore. And I have lots of airline stories, but my favorite is I was 6 months pregnant and had just had a miscarriage. And I was scheduled to fly to the East Coast, so it was about a 4-hour flight. To speak at a conference. And my husband said, "I know that you normally do ask men to help you," because it kind of became my mission, because I saw something in the men that I asked to help me. It's like, spinach to Popeye. It's like, yes, they become this manly man, and they've now anything else I can do, some dragons that I can slay for you, no, that's okay, just needed help with a bag, and I saw that it really helped a man feel more manly. Exactly.
Amen. Yes.
So I got to the point where I'd just say, "Excuse me, sir, will you help me with my bag, please? I've got my hands full." "Oh, yeah." "Oh, they'd love to help." So my husband said, "Now I know you normally do ask for help, but just had a miscarriage. Your health is very fragile. I don't want anything to happen. So please promise me that you'll ask someone to help you with this bag." I said, "Yes, I will." Well, this particular time, I, for some reason, got lucky and was one of the first people to board the plane. That never happens. And there was hardly anybody on the plane, but just there was a man sitting right across the aisle from where I was going to be sitting, and he was sitting next to a woman. They weren't speaking. I didn't know they were together. So they're probably still not speaking. But anyway, so I got onto the plane, and I got down to that area, and I said, "Excuse me, sir." And again, before you can even finish the sentence, men are on their feet, they're willing to help. And he said, oh, yes, is there something you need? I said, will you help me with my bag? He said, sure. And he reached down to pick up my bag and put it in the overhead bin. And what now I know was his wife reached out and grabbed his arm and said, she looks healthy enough to me. Let her put it up there herself. It's like, the claws came out and, I thought we're going to get into this clawing fight right here on the plane. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, I didn't realize that you were traveling together. And I said, I just had this medical procedure done, and my husband made me promise not to lift my bag because it was a bit heavy. And she goes, well, if it was so heavy, you should have checked your bag. You shouldn't have brought it on the plane. Well, this poor man, really, he's looking at her. He's incredulous. He said, no, that's okay. I'll help her with her bag. And she used a lot of foul language. It was a very long and drawn out, very vocal, foul thing. And the whole plane, everyone behind us, very loud. Everyone heard the entire conversation. He said, no, that's okay. So he puts it in the overhead bin. And so I scoot over and sit next to the window. And a couple of minutes later, a gentleman comes and sits down next to me. He goes, wow, that was quite something, And I said, yeah, I'm a little embarrassed. He goes, well, don't worry about it. When we get to the city, I'll get the bag down for you. I said, oh, thank you so much. So sure enough, we're pulling into the gate. We're in a long flight. We get to the other end, and we're pulling into the gate. And a man 3 rows up, and was sitting on the aisle, gets up, turns around. I mean, the seatbelt sign is still on, and we're not quite there yet. And he turns around, he points at me, excuse me, ma'am, what color is your bag? Let me get that down for you. And the gentleman next to me said, oh, don't worry about it. I already offered to get it down for her. I'll take care of it. The guy across the aisle stood up and said, no, I put it up there. I'm taking it down, And she starts yelling and screaming at me. So I get off the plane, and now I'm like the hero, I get to the big baggage claim. Women were coming up to me. How do you get men to fight over you like that? It's like this big secret, because I'm a woman. I allow men to help me. It's okay. We have to get away from this fact. No, it's okay. I can handle it myself. Because that still is my first, someone wants to offer to help, if it's a man or a woman. Oh, thanks. No, that's okay. We're a little bit reticent. But when we as women lower our pride, become a little bit more humble, and allow people to help us, we both win. A woman can grow in humility, and a man grows in charity. He learns to reach outside of himself and offer to be a little bit uncomfortable and go outside of himself a little bit and help a woman. So we both win. But when a woman says, no thanks, I can do it myself, she becomes more prideful, and it forces the man, basically, to become more selfish, because then he refuses to help or offer to help because he's been shut down so many times.
Just goes back into the shell.
Right,
and
into his cave.
And you won't come out again.
Right, no.
Not for this, anyway.
No, he's been shot down too many times. He's been chopped off too many times. He won't do it. So it's just part of embracing who we are, and it's okay to accept help and to grow in virtue.
Well, the whole point of what you're doing, I think, is with modesty, with femininity, with all this type of thing, is to really just to reclaim basic common sense. Things that everybody knows instinctively. I had a wonderful definition of scholasticism, which is the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas. And it just says, scholasticism is a detailed explanation of what we all know instinctively.
Very
and
true.
This is the type of thing that that needs to be done with just basic human nature.
Right.
Basic human nature.
Yeah, and it expands into other areas of our life as well. A lot of it is a lot of common sense, but it's not so common anymore.
I think Chesterton said that common sense is not as common as it used to be.
Right.
And it's the type of common sense that we need to employ for our family life, in raising children, in looking at, we talked about before, the pop culture, and just, fashions. Our Lady said certain fashions will be introduced that will offend our Lord very much. But Bishop Sheen used to say, women are slaves of fashions of clothing, men are slaves of fashions of thought.
Ooh.
And what we have today in 2011, after years of revolution, is we have both right now. We have bad fashions of dress and poisonous fashions of thought. Fashions of thought that are just me first, that are anti-family, that are anti-common sense. And releasing our children into this poisonous atmosphere is the last thing a parent could do.
It's part, you know, we talked about being countercultural, and people, you know, oh, I don't want to be like everybody else. You know, I want to be different. I want to do things my way. I want to do it different. But they do the things the way everybody else is doing them anyway. So what we're calling on people to do is to be truly countercultural.
Well, it's interesting. Marion Horvath, who is also talks about manners, femininity, all this type of thing. People will ask her, why do you always wear a dress? Why do you always wear a skirt? And she gives an interesting answer. She doesn't just say, well, to be more feminine, all this stuff. She that's all part of it, but she says, I wear a dress and I always wear a skirt to be counter-revolutionary, to be always making a statement. And this is the type of thing, too, I think we have to instill in our children, that rather than making modesty and common sense, virtue, just a series of rules, of do's and don'ts, and you're a Catholic, so you have to do this and you can't do that, and keeping at that level, first of all, instilling in the reasons why it needs to be done, but also investing in it a kind of campaign, a kind of crusade, that this is making a statement of truth and goodness and forming who you are as different from the rest of the pack in something that's truly good and truly virtuous. So I think that's one of my favorite responses about wearing a dress, is to be counter-revolutionary, because we're on the receiving end of a revolution that is anti-Christ, anti-nature, and anti-common sense.
And women have found over and over again, I get emails at least once a week from women that say, because I give them a 2-week challenge, wear a dress every day for 2 weeks and see what happens. And over and over and over again, women write me and say, you know what? I'm treated better. People treat me differently. People treat me with more respect. You know, I do notice a difference. And they feel better about themselves. They feel more comfortable. They feel, you know, so it comes back around over and over again. You know, how you dress does make a difference. Not only does it make you feel different, it's how people treat you differently as well.
Well, it's something that we see in something that Shakespeare certainly knew. The end of Taming of the Shrew, where Katharina gives that famous speech. Yes. And I'd have to paraphrase it. I wish I had the poetry memorized, but she talked about the fact that the woman's nature is to be loving and nurturing and soft in a good way, and that the fact that our external manifestation should be in harmony with our inner parts.
Right.
And the nature of the woman is to love, to nurture. We call the earth Mother Earth for a reason, right, because it's the earth that's giving life. It's fruitful. It's not contracepting its plants and corn and vegetables out of existence. It's giving life. And this is the nature of the woman, to be loving, to give life, and to nurture.
Absolutely. And we see that with our children. Okay, this is spring when we're here today. And we have our outdoor cats. They're all our barn cats. We have too many of them. And 3 of them have given birth. So now we have about 15 kittens now. And so all of the children go out and they want to see the newborn kittens and which ones are boys, which ones are girls. And as they grow, the little kittens develop their, you know, who's going to be the bully of the family and who's the runt of the litter. Our girls always go for the small, defenseless little ones and say, "Oh, poor little Bitty, here she is." Oh, and the boys pick up the bullies, and they're like, "Oh, Hercules," and, you know, and they've got the big bullies fighting, you know. So they have them working together. So this is not how necessarily
yes,
just our family. This is just
yes,
how children are, and this is the problem that I had. Now, I played competitive sports when I was a teenager. And this is the problem and my husband was an athlete, still is, and he also coached, but he coached girls' high school basketball. And he hated it because the girls didn't focus on the game. They were always thinking about, ooh, last time we played her 2 years ago, that girl bumped me and I'll never forgive her for that. And he's like, can we just ignore the personalities and go? But I found for myself, I was in college and I played volleyball. And there was at this one point where I knew this girl could not return my serve. And I waited, and so when she came around, I knew I just send it right down her throat, nothing could happen, she would not be able to handle it. So sure enough, I hit it right at her, boom, bounces off her, she can't handle it. And I thought, yeah, I knew it. Because you go, in sports, you find their weakest link, and you attack it. So then I was up on the line, and I thought, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spike it right down her throat. Sure enough, they set the ball up, I spiked it, smacked her in the face, busted her nose, blood shot all over the place, and I went, yes! And something inside me cracked. And I walked off and I never played again. Because it is the feminine nature to protect the weak link. But in competitive sports, it teaches you to attack the weakest link. And I think that's probably a big issue of why so many women get abortions, is because they see this unborn child as the weak link that's preventing them from getting what they want, whether it be a promotion, a job, or whatever it is.
It's called the new freedom.
I suppose.
It's called the new freedom. I mean, our Lord said, woe to those who call good evil and evil good.
Right. And so that's the big problem that I see now. I don't have a problem with, we as a family, we participate in sports together as a family. We have a lot of acreage, so we go outside and we play and we do things. But for a young lady to get involved in competitive sports, I find that to be very damaging to her very nature, which is to protect the weak and the innocent. You know, and of course that can go a little bit too far, you know, where we, protect the baby seal moths or something, you know. But, you know, to keep our nature and then to balance it out. Again, equal in dignity, separate in roles and functions, but as a man and a woman, those roles and functions work together for the common good.
Colleen, this is terrific information you're sharing with us, and thank you so much. And we're closing off. I'm John Veneri from Catholic Family News, filling in for Father Gruner, and we'll see you next time.